How worried should Yankees fans be about that growing injury list? You've got Giancarlo Stanton, you've got Aaron Judge, Max Fried. Now this is just the latest.
Yeah, it is a growing list of injuries in the Bronx. And I think the biggest one for me is obviously Aaron Judge. When you lose a three-time MVP that is capable of hitting 60 home runs each and every year, that's a really big deal. And I don't think it's just that, Aaron Judge is going to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. It's 4 to 6 weeks until he gets re-imaged on that first rib. So this is something that could end up being a 2-month, even more than 2-month absence. But I think the thing that's really important for the Yankees and Yankees fans to realize is what's most important for the New York Yankees is October. It is not right now. I think the Yankees have been one of the best teams in Major League Baseball consistently throughout the course of this first half. And I don't think that's going to change, especially in a really, really bad year for the American League. So I think the most important thing is you're going to get guys like Giancarlo Stanton back. He's working his way back from injury. You're going to get Max Fried back. You just got Garrett Cole back, and he's been really good. Cam Schlittler has been one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. And guys like Jazz Chisholm Jr. are starting to heat it up. Cody Bellinger has been really consistent for them. Ben Rice has been arguably the American League MVP, and that was including when Aaron Judge was in that lineup. So the Yankees have more than enough talent to get through this rut. But yes, you want to be able to get through the marathon that is the 162-game season healthy.
Russ, it was kind of crazy seeing that one tweet on the screen where it was listing off all the names of the players. It reminded me of when I was covering the Yankees, and there were times during that stretch where it was, they had 10 guys at various points who were out, and key players. And with these injuries, some of them are kind of longer-term injuries, particularly in the case of Aaron Judge, as you mentioned. So my question to you is, I'm curious, how do you think that this is going to impact what GM Brian Cashman might do as we get closer to the trade deadline?
I was going to say, Coley, Cash, he's the longest tenured executive in all of sports. He's not going to panic, right? I think the one thing the Yankees have done a good job of is building depth with a guy like Jose Caballero, who they acquired at last year's trade deadline, who's been one of the best players they've had on their roster. It was so good, they sent Anthony Volpe to AAA when he came off the IL earlier this season. So they've been able to acquire depth over the years. I expect that to be something that Brian Cashman does at this year's trade deadline. They're going to get impact somewhere. I imagine it's going to be in their bullpen, and maybe it's somebody else in their rotation. But I don't think Brian Cashman is the type of executive to panic. He's going to play out the next 2 months, see what the Yankees really need. You'll find out what you need in your lineup. Will you have Aaron Judge back at the deadline? Do you not have Aaron Judge back at the deadline? Maybe that's something that they need to, figure out. But I think what Brian Cashman is going to do, he's going to sit back. He's going to look at what they do over the next 60 days. He's going to see what their weaknesses, what their strengths are, and then he's going to make his moves from there. So I don't think he's going to panic, but I do think the good news for the Yankees is that they've put themselves in a really good position as we go here into the month of June and into July and as we approach the trade deadline.
And we've got plenty of time before the trade deadline, right? A lot of baseball left to be played. A lot of things can change from now until then. But at this point, who do you expect to be really aggressive as we approach the deadline?
Yeah, one team in particular that I think should be very aggressive this year is the Milwaukee Brewers. And I know people out there are probably like, the Brewers, like they're not a team that really makes splashy moves at the trade deadline, but this might be the year for them to do it. They have one of the best farm systems in all of Major League Baseball. They've consistently, for the last couple of years, been the best team in the NL Central. That is, once again, really strong this year. And they are one of the best teams in the National League and Major League Baseball as a whole. And when you look at what they've been able to do in their rotation led by Jacob Misiorowski, who has been phenomenal this year, Chris Hook, their pitching coach, has been able to develop pitchers who aren't Jacob Misiorowski and throw 103 miles an hour. What they've been able to do with Kyle Harrison, who's on his third team and made a couple of tweaks here and there and have turned him into one of the best pitchers in the National League. It's great. Bryce Terang has turned himself into a superstar at second base. Jackson Chourio is one of the best young players out in their outfield. And so when I look at the Milwaukee Brewers, I look at them and I say, okay, they're a more talented team this year than they were last year. And they made it to the NLCS last year before they ran into the Los Angeles Dodgers. Maybe this is the year that they say, we're going to push some of these chips into the middle of the table and say, we are one of the best teams in the National League, and we're not scared of teams like the Dodgers or the Phillies or the Atlanta Braves. And I think if the Brewers decided to do it, they definitely have the pieces to make a big splash.
We're seeing one of the hardest throwing pitchers in the game, Jacob Misiorowski, right there on the screen. Another guy who throws hard and has been throwing hard for a long, long time is Aroldis Chapman. And I know that USA Today's Bob Nightingale wrote recently that Chapman's on the trading block for the Red Sox. If the Red Sox were looking to indeed trade him, who do you think would be a good suitor to pick him up?
I look at what the Boston Red Sox have done this year, and the belief around the industry is that they're going to be a seller. And when you look at how their season has kind of gone, I can understand why you say that. You fire your longtime manager, Alex Cora. You have all these organizational changes and rifts. And so when you have a asset like Aroldis Chapman, and I wrote about this last week, for Yahoo, another guy that's on their roster that I think should be moved and has done a great job for them is Wilson Contreras, their first baseman. But I think when you look at Aroldis Chapman and what he's able to do, the Red Sox might find themselves in a little bit of a bidding war, right? Where it's a seller's market for a guy like Aroldis Chapman, because what you can't teach is 100 miles an hour from the left side. And it seems like Aroldis Chapman has been pitching for the last 15 years, still doing what he's doing right now. It's honestly crazy. But I think any playoff contender as we get to the trade deadline, whether it's the Dodgers, whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Milwaukee Brewers, whether it's the Seattle Mariners, like any team that is looking to get to October, and even more than that, be a team that competes for a World Series in October, will be looking to add an arm like an Aroldis Chapman. So they will have no shortage of suitors, but I think it's really amazing how this far into his career, Aroldis Chapman is still a priority at the trade deadline for teams.
It is crazy. And you mentioned how you think the Brewers should be active at the trade deadline. I want to go back to them for a second and touch on Jacob Misiorowski, because this is a scary man. It's not just, the speed that he has. It's also the fact that he can throw 102 plus for like 60, 70 pitches a game. It's terrifying. But there is kind of a double-edged sword there, Russ. There's, the fact that he is one of the most dangerous pitchers in the Major League Baseball, but also the fact that pitchers that throw that hard can also be a ticking time bomb. Is he a durability concern in Milwaukee?
It's an interesting question, Caroline, because I think when you see 103 flash on the gun at ballparks, you're like, what is this? We've never seen something like this from a starting pitcher before. He is the hardest throwing starting pitcher we've ever seen, at least as they've been tracking pitch velocities. Your question about is his arm a ticking time bomb is a good one, because I think we find ourselves at a time in baseball where it's not just Jacob Misiorowski. That's something that can be said for anybody that throws baseballs in Major League Baseball today. I think we're seeing the amount of elbow injuries around Major League Baseball over the last decade. Jeff Passan wrote the book, The Arm, a long time ago, and it's as true as ever before of teams looking and wondering and trying to figure out how to stop the litany of arm injuries we're seeing around the game right now. And no, I don't think Jacob Misiorowski is any more or less at risk than any pitcher right now. When you throw hard, there are going to be injury concerns. When you spin breaking balls, there are going to be injury concerns. And we're at a time in Major League Baseball where max effort, velocity, and spin are the three most important things when it comes to how teams are looking for their next great arms. And it's one of those things where as talking to teams about this very issue and talking to players about it, they look at it honestly as a occupational hazard as opposed to something that's a epidemic, even though we know that's what it is in Major League Baseball. But specifically to Jacob Misiorowski, I don't look at him as being any more or less at risk of injury than any other pitcher in baseball right now.
There's also a lot of concern for the Cubs right now as well. They were the hottest team in baseball early on, but they've been on a free fall, 6-19, and their last 25. Woof. How does a team, and look, I know it's a long, long season, but how does a team that looked that red hot for so long suddenly go so cold?
They're the streakiest team in baseball, Caroline. You're talking about not one, but two 10-game winning streaks. They had a 15-game winning streak at Wrigley Field, and then you have a 10-game losing streak. They look like a completely different team. And I think the biggest thing has been their offense. Yeah, they've had a ton of injuries in their starting rotation. You can't minimize that. When you lose Cade Horton for the year, Justin Steele, who was already on the IL, has a setback in his rehab and gets pushed back. Matthew Boyd, who had a couple of stints on the IL to begin the season and then tears his meniscus sitting down to play with his kids. And then last night they lose Jameson Taillon. They had lost Edward Cabrera to a blister. That's 5 different guys in their rotation who have gone down with injury. And then Shota Imanaga, who was good to start the season, has not been good over his last 5 starts. But when you look at their offense, they have gone ice cold. There was a stretch during those winning streaks where they really weren't swinging the bats great, but they were getting enough run production and their pitching was solid. Now the pitching has gone away and that offense has gone away as well. They have a significant amount of their everyday players with an OPS below 700. Alex Bregman, their big-time free agent signing, has not been good. And he even talked about it last night and said, hey, I haven't been good this season. Dansby Swanson, the everyday shortstop, has gotten benched the last couple of days because of his inability to get things going offensively. Nico Horner is one of the better players in Major League Baseball and had the slump-proof approach at the plate, and he has not been able to find his swing over the last month. And so when you look at this Cubs team, they just have too many guys who are not swinging the bat right now to be able to win games. And I think the concerning thing for me when I'm looking at the Chicago Cubs is the teams that they're starting to lose to. Like the San Francisco Giants are one of the worst teams in the National League, and they came into Chicago and took 2 of 3 over the weekend. When you look at the Cubs schedule in the month of June, they should have some series to get themselves on track. I believe the Giants were one of those series, but who knows now? You're going to go into Colorado against the Rockies, who are another one of those worst teams in the National League. If you're not going to be able to come out and take 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 against teams like the Rockies and the Giants, I don't know how the Cubs can get themselves going here. But yeah, they're a streaky team. I still expect them to bounce back and play closer to their norms, those averages, the back of the baseball card, as we like to say. But it has been really wild to see how their entire lineup, outside of guys like Michael Busch and PCA as of late, haven't been able to get things going.
Yeah, they haven't been getting anything going. And something else that has been getting going is contract talks and labor negotiation talks between the MLBPA and the owners. And the owners met last week to kind of discuss where things stand in terms of those CBA negotiations. Does it appear as if the two sides are any closer to a deal here?
It's early, guys. It is really early, and this is something that is going to be a long, long negotiation for a lot of different reasons. And I think when you get both sides have now gotten those proposals out and they have made them very public, and I think something that I want fans who are watching right now to know about, and something that I'll talk about here over the next 6 months or so as we approach the end of the current CBA, is that fans are going to be right in the middle of this thing. I think when you hear some of the rhetoric and verbiage that is being used, especially by Major League Baseball, you're going to hear things like, our fans have told us that they want competitive balance. Our fans want to feel like their team has an opportunity to go out there each and every day and have a chance to not only win a ball game, but make it to the postseason, this and that. And I find that really interesting because it seems like this was something that, from a PR standpoint, the league and ownership owners wanted to get ahead of and be able to kind of win that battle of public opinion. And that's something that you're going to see a lot here as we go through the regular season. Look, you've seen the commissioner, Rob Manfred, on Pat McAfee. I think when you're talking about the biggest, one of the biggest sports shows out there, and you have the commissioner of Major League Baseball trying to get the league and owners' message out there, I think that matters. And so as fans watch what is going on, you're going to, there's always going to be this back and forth. But I think what really matters is getting to a point where some of these things get checked off. Like, okay, we can figure this out. We can figure that out. And then you can get to the big things like the salary cap that I think a lot of people are really concerned about.